So I do. And then I can marry those up.
Just scared me. That's the lighten the mood, isn't it?
That's it.
You know what Graham Watson did once? He went to Mexico to speak about photography, and he said he stood up and he saw these Mexicans just staring at him, and he didn't speak Spanish, so he had an old camera just to lighten the mood. He said, "This is the camera," and he threw it up in the air, and it smashed on the ground. He said he saw these Mexicans looking up, just going, and then it smashed, and everyone thought, they started laughing. And that was his ice-breaking moment, to sort of get the mood, loosen up the mood.
We're going to take a moment to talk to Rupert Guinness, who's come into the Riot office. We have no direction. We're just going to talk for a while because we've known each other probably 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we would consider each other peers because we're two experienced cycling journalists. It's just been announced that he's going to be working with Gearoid Towey, and you've got a role with Crossing the Line. So it's not a journalism role, is it? Or what's the plan?
Thanks for having me anyway, Rob. But yeah, it's a position where I'll be the multimedia producer. So there'll be a mixed mash of a lot of jobs. There'll be writing, there'll be doing vlogs, there'll be hosting podcasts. I guess using journalistic assets or skills to try and help Crossing the Line, help people, or athletes, elite athletes. Firstly, with their development as people while they're in their careers, because I think that often gets lost, the development of a person, rather than the development of an athlete being a gold medal winning machine, so to speak. And then also with that inevitable period where there's going to have transition in their life, when they're going to have to transition from being an elite athlete to, life after their athletic career. And there's a lot of issues, I think, as we all know, that athletes or people who are athletes struggle with.
It's interesting. I remember when I talked to him last October or so, he summarised what Crossing the Line was all about, was to help people through that transitional period of being pro athlete and then how they adapt to life afterwards. And then he quickly summed it up and said, it's sort of first world problems. But it's not really. One of your friends took his own life, a rugby union player.
I knew Dan Vickerman. I knew him through my days of writing rugby for the Sydney Morning Herald when I was on the Herald. He'd made the transition into life after his career as a Wallaby rugby union player. And he, I used to see him in the street in the city now and then. We'd be walking down and suddenly this towering, imposing figure in a suit. Inside this strong, imposing person, he obviously has had a lot of struggles in his life after playing rugby. It was the first time for me that I've known someone who has suicided. It started to make me think a lot more about, the whole thing is contradictory to what I've understood about athletes. I'm sounding kind of naive about that, but I think, maybe that's part of the problem, that a lot of people haven't been exposed and thought about the issues behind perceived failure and success and the systems that are in place in sport.
I think it's really healthy that Gearoid's doing what he's doing. And I think one of the issues with mental health is that it seems to be this thing that we can allude to but never really discuss. And then you see the real world problems personified when you're having to go to funerals of someone who just couldn't cope. It's it's a taboo topic in a sense, but it's also something that has to be discussed.
Yeah, I agree, Rob. I think it's a confronting topic to discuss, particularly when it hasn't been discussed, and particularly if you haven't been in discussions with it. So it is confronting, but I think it's something that there's a lot to be. We can't undo the suicide, but we can certainly address and discuss the suicide and the reasons why. Obviously there's grieving and mourning that has to take place, but I think it is healthy to confront that issue and discuss it. And because I know that through the tragic circumstances of this year of the people that we know who have suicided, I've learnt something. Maybe I haven't learned enough to change anything, but I think if we can just all learn something as we go along, that maybe in all our lives experiences we can help have some impact on somebody hopefully not take that path. There's certain issues I found a real struggle to talk about. I didn't know, like how do you talk about it without offending someone? I think you just got to talk, just get it out and talk, because I don't think anyone's going to be, if there's anything's offensive, it's not deliberately offensive. It's just because we don't know. It could be ignorance, But just once we start talking, everyone can feel more comfortable about talking, and then the issue gets dealt with, and the stigma goes away a little bit, and then perhaps people who have dealing with mental health issues, the stigma goes away the stigma for them goes away, and they can talk about it before it gets too entrenched. So,
But lessons for athletes apply across the board.
Yes.
And let's talk about media, because that's what brings us together.
Yep.
And I'm going through a transition of my own at the moment. We've published a magazine for almost 20 years, and you've been a journalist for longer than I've been publishing magazines. And most of that time you were purely a cycling journalist. That's changed enormously. And it's been accelerated in recent years. It's a different infrastructure, and it's forced us into a transition of our own. It is confronting. How do you think you're going to adapt to this great media transition?
Well, I guess I'm excited, and of course I'm nervous in a positive way. I think it's good to be nervous. It shows you still got energy and you still got something ticking inside you. I do agree with it's like what you said about how how we've been covering cycling in the past, and like you're going through your transition, and I'm going through a transition now. And when I took my voluntary redundancy from Fairfax Media or Sydney Morning Herald in January last year, I was ready to take that redundancy because the media landscape was changing as to how things are covered, and clickbait journalism, and everything was now. No time to think, just get it out. And okay, that's the way things are going. You can't change that, and that's not the style of journalism I subscribed to when I started in the early 80s. But in that year after I took a redundancy, I still kept to my own traditional ways of covering of what I did. There's not a sustainable platform where you can have a sustainable income of selling stories, because there isn't the money in the sport. There isn't the money coming in.
No.
And this is the conundrum. And here we talk about the development of the globalisation of cycling and how it's so international now, and English is one of the main language in cycling. Is it really developing because there isn't the income coming into the sport? And it's not just me, it's you, there's teams trying to survive. I don't think it is developing internationally. There's more English-speaking writers, but as a business, we're sort of slightly digressing now.
No, it's
but
totally right.
What I've found, and I've learned a lot in the last year, and about, I'd say even just through, we all do through our own experiences. So my experience in the last year has been really valuable, even though it hasn't brought in a lot of money, but it's given me a better understanding and a better clarity of mind about what, for where I should be going, how I'm going to reinvent myself. And I'm not going to make millions of dollars, but I've got to really work for something I really love. And this is where it all started for me 30 years ago. What do I really love? I really love bikes. I love, pro bike racing, the classics, and I lived that dream. I had the privilege to live that dream, and I still totally cherish that. Things have changed, so I've got to find something I really believe in, which gets me to crossing the line. We're all driven by passion, and you can't pretend it. And I've told you privately, like before this year's Tour de France, it was, I was excited about the prospects of Richie Porte. I still am, and I was really excited about it because we were going to do the diary for him. But there was still that little element inside me where, for the first time, I wasn't that excited about the Tour de France, about the prospect of going to the Tour. It was like this little thing inside me. I said, I don't know, usually I've got this buzz. I didn't have that.
Just because you've done something for 28 years doesn't mean you've got to do it another time.
No, exactly. And
it's hard to come to that realisation.
Yeah, and well, see, that's the gamble. You think that leap of faith, admitting that's what you felt. That's the God's honest truth. And there's a lot of issues that sort of affect that sort of. And I'm not going to say disillusionment, because it's not disillusionment. It's just maybe your batteries run out of that. Your passion needs to be redirected somewhere else. Because the Tour de France is still a fantastic event. No way would I would always recommend, if anyone wants to go to the Tour, go. If you want to cover the Tour de France, really, it'd be a great experience. But there's a lot. The sport's gone through so much change for so many reasons as well. That does wear on your natural, enthusiasm and love. It does get challenged. I mean, we've all been challenged with that for various issues. But put it this way: circumstances force you to find a new pathway.
Yeah. We inevitably will find ourselves talking about the Tour de France, but I want to make it clear, just while I'm sitting behind the camera, that the aim of this interview wasn't just to put you in front and get you to talk about your 30 years as a Tour de France journalist. We're deliberately trying to avoid the cliches. We understand you wear that shirt, those shirts. We understand that you have been involved with cycling for a long time, and that's not to be disregarded in this discussion, but we're trying to explore different themes and topics that we perhaps haven't brought up in the past before. So I think that the transition is a perfect starting point.
Look, as a traditional journalist, in covering the sport, it hasn't all been, I wouldn't say as a journalist, my career hasn't been all success. I've had bad patches in my career too, with decision making, poor judgment making. I still believe, like for example, that the doping issues of during the Lance Armstrong era, for example, I'm not just talking one person, just the whole general thing. I totally subscribe to the fact that the mainstream media in that era should have more vigilantly covered doping, myself included. There's only a handful of people who had the guts to actually pursue, the relevant teams and systems. I'm not criticising. I'm just I'm just saying that in that time it could have all been done a lot better. Blah blah blah. We can't undo what wasn't done well then, but we can do things better in the future, and that's the biggest lesson I've learned out of that. I still feel that's my not so proud moment of my career. Like I said, you can't change what's happened, but you can. When you move on to the next thing, you learn from that.
Yeah.
You learn from an experience, whether it was a good experience or a bad experience, whether it was something you did right or did something wrong. Particularly the things that you didn't do so well or did wrong, then they can't be that bad experience, because hopefully you learn from something. So what I was thinking, in this transition I'm going through now, is to try and think of how, if I have certain attributes or credentials or whatever, not just as a journalist, maybe just as someone who can hopefully make sense if they're talking, to help people. Simple, to try and help, rather than my career. I don't want it just to be about what I get out of it. Do I get the back page lead? I'm going to win a journalist award. Am I going to do this? Is my book going to sell? They never sell anyway, my books. Just to try and, I'm 55, I've got a chance here to, I've got some energy left, and I would love to, if it's a holistic sort of thing, if I can contribute rather than take. A lot of this is, my outlook has changed from that Indy Pac race I took. I did. I mean, I had a feeling that doing the Indy Pac, Indian Pacific Wheel Race, would have some impact on me, a positive one, but it certainly it got me back to thinking about the essence of why we love cycling, and the sense of riding a bike in the wilderness, in the outback, or on the Nullarbor Plain. Sometimes cycling is like putting your head in a toilet bowl, and then someone flushes it. You think, it's just like, why would you do that? You wouldn't do that. But I mean, it's just a mess. And sometimes you need to actually go to the other extreme to reattach with why you got there in the first place, which is the love of riding a bike. And and the Indian Pacific Wheel Race stripped me bare emotionally, physically. Literally, you're out there in the wilderness, no one around you except you and your bike, and that sense of spirit and freedom. It's a really special moment that it's just a really special moment. Even the bad moments are special. The impact of the event was huge on me and my outlook on cycling, and I didn't quite see things the same. A bike race I didn't look at the same, like the traditional bike race. I went to the Giro and the Tour de France, and I started to think that, you know what, with all the all the teams and everything, there's this essence to we've got to win, we must win. A Tour de France is a failure if we haven't won a stage, or no Spaniards have won. And this whole ideal of must win, is that must we win? I mean, I felt I won in the Indy Pack from the experience. Winning's nice, but I think sport's better, pure sport. I think competition sporting competition is healthy though too, because it does, sets programs of preparation and planning and striving to achieve something. But I think there's where the balance gets lost is when the outcome when there's the result, how are results interpreted. That's what I think. The pursuit of winning is great, or the pursuit of competition is great. To do the best you can, whether that's first, second, or third. If you've done the best you can, and you've done it fairly and squarely, and in good spirit, every person who does that should feel really absolutely satisfied, happy. I know if you're looking for the win, disappointment's natural, but it's being able to sort of quickly evaluate that disappointment, because disappointment is a human emotion. So you can't criticise athletes who are upset about not winning. I think people on the outside have to think more about how do we interpret someone's result. Failure, I think the word failure is a really bad word in any sense. I've said failure too many times. I've sometimes thought things I've done is I've thought I've failed. I've seen someone else, I'm sure I've said it as a sporting journalist, they failed at the Olympics. And apart from corrupt illegal ways, people are going out there to compete and not going out there to, they don't not care. When a football team, when the Wallabies go through a string of bad results, and you look at them, you go like, I've said it. I said, these guys, can't believe they're representing Australia. They are representing Australia, and the reality is they're not trying to dishonour the Wallaby jersey, and they're not dishonouring the Wallaby jersey. They're doing the best they can, and it's just circumstances of competition. When our team loses, perhaps we don't give enough credit to the team that's beaten them for their sheer class. And this all can come back to the issue of mental health issues too, because how everything's interpreted, how results are interpreted, and how teams or individuals are criticised for their perceived failure, that has an impact on an individual.
100%.
And they have to go home. They don't want to read the papers tomorrow or they don't want to check their social media because there's a whole string of people saying, you suck, you lose. Can't believe our tax-paying money is going to send you to Olympics in no medals. It's insane, isn't it, when you think about it?
No one deliberately does a bad job at anything. No.
People do bad jobs, or people underperform, but there's a reason for it. And they may have emotional issues. They may just be feeling fragile that day because they're human, isn't it? There's so many things to it, to a performance, and we're not, obviously not talking about corruption or cheating. They're the elements that are producing fake results.
Yes.
But clean, pure, honest, people just doing their best. I love seeing someone do their best. You can tell when someone knows that they're happy they've done their best when they may not have won the medal, but you can tell. And there's nothing better than seeing someone absolutely thrilled that they've put everything out there they can, you know.
Yeah.
And I love it, you know. That's why I love going to see marathon. You know, you go see the marathon, for example. You just go on the street and see people running past. You go on your mate, and you sometimes you see them and go thanks, and you know that buzz, because I know when I've plodded through my Ironmans, you know, I know it means a great deal when someone says you're looking great. You know you're not, but you love the fact that they've come out to give you a bit of a cheer, you know.
Yeah.
So I've totally digressed, haven't I? From
that's the whole beauty of these discussions. I was about to start talking about Marcellus Wallace and Butch from Pulp Fiction, where he tells him before his boxing match that he's going to feel a sting.
Yeah.
That's going to be pride. Conveniently, the camera went dead while I was talking about Marcellus Wallace, so that's lucky.